In JavaScript, what would happen if you ran b plus a plus plus a plus a? Go ahead, run that code and see what happens. You end up getting banana. But why do you get banana here? Can you explain what JavaScript is doing to get to this result? And if you can't, that means you don't fully understand how the plus operator works in JavaScript. But that's fine, because we're going to change that in this video. Let's start with the basics. I'm just going to go 1 plus 1, which equals 2. And here we're using the plus operator with two numbers as the operands, the things to either side of the plus. And if these are both numbers, then JavaScript will perform simple addition. So as long as these are numbers, we will get the sum of those numbers. Basic math stuff. Now, what if we try the string 1 plus the string 1? Well, we end up getting the string 11. In this case, the plus operator concatenates each operand into a single string. And that's all the plus operator does. It either adds two numbers together or concatenates two strings together. So what happens if I try to take the number 1 and add it to the string 1? So there's kind of three potential outcomes here. The first is that JavaScript converts the number 1 to a string and we end up with the string 11. The second is that JavaScript converts the string 1 to a number and we end up with the number 2. Or JavaScript just fails because it can't figure out how to add a number to a string. But we'll find out that it's the first thing that it does. It converts the number to a string. And that's because of one simple rule that the plus operator has. And that's if one of the operands is a string, then the entire operation becomes string concatenation. And we can find this rule in the JavaScript standards. I'm just going to Google plus operator in JavaScript. Now I'll actually go to the Mozilla docs because Mozilla always links to the standard. There it is. And these can be a little bit difficult to read, but if we follow this a little bit, we'll find the rules for exactly what's going on here. And basically, right here, 1C is saying that if either the left operand or the right operand is a string, then we're going to do string concatenation. Otherwise, it must be a numeric operation. But that does mean that if either side is a string, it's going to be string concatenation. That's what it's going to do first. So a really easy way to convert something to a string would be to just add it to an empty string. Since this is going to be string concatenation, it's going to convert 1 to a string and concatenate it to an empty string, so we end up with the string 1. But what about something like this? If I add 1 to 2 to an empty string, what will happen when I run this code? And the answer is the string 3, because the operations happen from left to right. So first we add 1 to 2 and get the number 3. Then we add 3 to an empty string, which is now string concatenation, so we get the string 3. But this does mean that if I switch these up a little bit and go empty string plus 1 plus 2, although the outcome of addition should be the same even if I rearrange the numbers, this will give us the string 12, because first we add the empty string to 1, making the string 1, then we add the string 1 to 2, which converts 2 to a string and concatenates them together to give us the string 12. So remember, if one of the operands in an addition operation is a string, it will be treated as string concatenation. But what if we're not working with strings or numbers? What if we're working with other values in JavaScript? For example, what if I take an array with the number 1 in it and try to add it to the Boolean value true? Neither of these are numbers, neither of these are strings, but JavaScript will try and either treat this as an addition operation or as a string concatenation. And the answer ends up being 1 true as a string. So when we have values that aren't strings or numbers, JavaScript will first try and convert those values to a primitive value. And with an array, it always tries to convert that to a string by joining all of the things in the array together, separated by a comma. So in this case, I just end up with the string 1, and then it's going to try and add that to true. True is a Boolean that's going to have to convert to a string, so we get the string true. And most objects, when converted to a primitive value, will be converted to a string. So if we ever have an object in the equation, we'll most likely end up with string concatenation. But some values, JavaScript will prefer to convert to a number. So for example, if I take true and add that to true, it will treat true as the number 1, so we'll end up with the number 2 as the outcome. And false plus false would be 0, since JavaScript treats false as the number 0. And we can also use the plus operator as a unary prefix operator, which means that we just put it in front of something like this. And this can be used to define the sign of a number. So if I put a -1 here, I get a -1, +1 is a +1, which is kind of unnecessary since it's always going to be +1 if I don't put anything there. But if we put the plus operator in front of a value that isn't a number, JavaScript will first try to convert that value into a number. So if I have the string 1, for example, JavaScript will convert that into the number 1. Or if I put plus in front of true, we'll get the number 1. Or if I put plus in front of an array that contains a number, we'll get that number. If I put plus in front of an array that contains multiple numbers, we'll end up with nan. So the rules here are kind of weird, and we can see this in the spec again if we look at how toNumeric works. And this is a bunch of rules that determine what we're going to get here, but it's not always completely obvious exactly what we'll get. So if I use the plus operator in front of a string with a number in it, then JavaScript will return that number. And this can be kind of handy if we wanted to add a number that was a string to another number. Then that can be a really shorthand syntax for converting a string into a number. But if I put this in front of a string that can't be represented as a number, we end up getting the value nan. Now let's break down the code that I had at the beginning. And the first thing that JavaScript is going to do is evaluate the unary plus operator, because that has a higher priority than any of the other plus operators. So it's going to try and convert this a into a number. And when it does that, it's going to end up with the value nan. So what we end up with is b plus a plus nan plus a. And then it's just going to try and add these together or concatenate them from left to right. And I missed a plus here. But since each time that there's a plus operator, one of the operands is a string, it's just going to concatenate these all into a single string. And when it gets to the value nan, it's just going to convert that into a string, so we end up with this stupid answer of banana. If you like this video, please leave me a comment, let me know what you thought. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to this channel and consider joining so you can help support me make more stupid videos like this. And one more thing here, we can shorten this significantly if instead of using triple equals, we use a double equals here, because double equals will check for nullish instead of checking for null. And yes, that is the second time I have shit on triple equals in this video. Leave a comment if I've upset you.